Hello, everybody. It's Zach here from RealEstateLicenseWizard.com. Today, I'm going to go over 255 real estate exam vocab terms. These terms are super important to know, and yes, you do need to know them for the real estate exam. Before I jump right into it, if you want a full text version of all these vocab terms, head over to our website, RealEstateLicenseWizard.com, click the Resources tab, look at our Ultimate Guide on Real Estate Terms, and there you can see a full version of everything that I'm going to go over in this video. Link down below. Anyways, buckle up and do me a favor and hit that like button if you're eager to pass the real estate exam. All right, so the way this is going to work is we are going to see the term. I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds to come up with your explanation, and we're going to see if your explanation matches the textbook version. Now, of course, don't be discouraged if the terms are not exactly the same, as obviously there's going to be a slight difference in words in your mind versus the words we have. As long as you understand the topics, we're cool though. Oh, and one last thing. Don't be afraid to keep score with a paper and pencil and leave the score of what you got down below in the comment section. Let's see who can do the best. All right, without further ado, let's jump right into it. So the first term we have today is abutting. Yes, abutting. So like I said earlier, I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds to kind of get that mind pumping, see what you can come up with before I flip and we talk about the definition briefly. All right, you guys know what abutting is? Let's see the definition. All right, abutting means an area of land or a building has a common boundary with another. So again, this means a specific area of land is connected to each other or it has a common boundary with it. And that's pretty much it. That's all you need to know for that one. All right, next one. The acceleration clause. Okay. All right, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think that one over. All right. Do you guys know what the acceleration clause? Hopefully, if you're not new to the channel you should be familiar with the term. So, the acceleration clause is a contract provision that allows a lender to require a borrower to repay all of an outstanding loan if payments are not being made or there's a breach of contract. All right. And we actually do have a video on contract clauses if you're interested, check that out too. All right. Accretion. Okay. So, like before, go ahead and think it over. All right, let's see. Accretion is the slow process of growth or acquisition of land, typically when soil is deposited by the natural action of water. Long-term accretion can actually increase the size of a property. That is true. That's a key takeaway with that term. One of the questions comes up on the exam are like, what are some ways that the size of a property can increase naturally? And that would be accretion would be one of the answers for that one. So hopefully you got that one. All right. Next one, active property. Oh, active property. Okay. Think that one over. Okay, so when you hear the term active property, that is referring to the status of the property. So if you or your client sees a home listing with just active as their status, this indicates that the property is available for sale. So that's a pretty basic one, but a super important one to know, especially if you're looking on like the MLS or Zillow or any of those new websites nowadays. If you see it says active, you got to know what that means. It's like a no-brainer there. So, all right, next one. Ooh, actual fraud. Okay. All right, think about that one. Okay, so when you think of actual fraud, you should just think of lying. Actual fraud is an intentional misrepresentation of fact, or in plain terms, lying. Simple as that. Actual fraud is one of the types of frauds, by the way, which I'm sure we'll get into more of those later. All right. Ooh, ad valorem. Okay. Think about that one for a moment. All right. Ad valorem. So it is a Latin phrase, and do you know what it means? So it's a Latin phrase meaning according to value. Yes, according to value. It's one of those super important Latin phrases that you need to know. Comes up on the exam as well as economics. If you guys have taken any economics classes, that shows up all the time. All right, adjustable rate mortgage or ARM. So I think we're looking for a brief definition of what a adjustable rate mortgage is. So think about that. Okay, so hopefully you guys know what a regular mortgage is. But basically, an adjustable rate mortgage has a flexible interest rate. It has a fixed period during which the initial interest remains the same, and then after that interest rate at a prearranged frequency, the fixed rate period uh, can vary significantly. So there's a lot of words there, but to just narrow it down, basically, an adjustable rate mortgage, its interest rate differs. You know, it can go lower, it can go higher, depending on a lot of things. If you buy a house and maybe the market isn't doing so well in interest rates, and you think that it's going to get better maybe in a couple of years, an adjustable rate mortgage could be an option for you. Obviously, there's risk there because uh, as it adjusts, it can go higher, lower, things like that. So that's why typically you see more fixed rate mortgages. Those are much more common. But hey, an adjustable rate mortgage is an option for people. And of course, it's something that you need to know as a real estate agent or real estate professional. So, all right. A little bit of a long one there, but important. All right, next one. Oh, here we go. This is a fun one. Adverse possession. Yes. All right. So if you are not new to this channel, or if you're a fan and you've been watching a bunch of videos, you should be familiar with this one. So I'll give you guys a minute to think that one over. All right. Did you guys figure it out? So adverse possession, remember it's a legal principle. It has to do with rights. All right, so let's see. So, adverse possession is the legal principle in which a person who does not have legal right to a property acquires legal ownership based on continuous occupation of the land without the permission of its real owner. So, yes, adverse possession, guys, is a super important concept you need to know for the exam. And of course, when you hear adverse possession, uh, think of like those crazy stories about squatters living on a property for 15 years and then gaining ownership. So that's adverse possession. Now, granted, that doesn't happen as much. More or less, it's smaller things where uh, people are just living on property and they don't even realize. Maybe here's a good example. Maybe they use a road or to get to the back of their property, not the front but the back, and they've been using it for years and years. And in fact, maybe they've been paying like taxes on it because they think it's theirs. Well, it turns out someone new gets property, their neighbor, and they find out, oh, well, they own that. They own that road, and there'd be some sort of legal, uh, you know, discussion about that. But the point is if that first person wanted to get property, they'd have to go through adverse possession to acquire that property. So a little bit of a deep dive there, but super important. So hopefully you guys learned something there. All right, next one. Agent. Awesome. Okay, agent. Now keep in mind it's just agent, not real estate agent, just agent. So think that one over. All right, you guys figure it out? Cool. All right, an agent is just someone who speaks for or represents someone. So, not just within real estate, but in a lot of other things. The key takeaway is it's representation. An agent represents something or someone. So that's the short definition. But again, if you kind of know that, it's pretty self-explanatory. But yeah. All right, next one. Agreement of sale. Okay. So think that one over. All right, you guys figure it out? Sweet. All right. So, an agreement of sale is a form that states the buyer's consent or the buyer consents to purchase a property and the seller agrees to sell that property with the terms and conditions illustrated in from both parties. So, pretty self-explanatory there. It's just an important form that you need to know for your real estate career. All right. Next one. Air rates. Okay. This one's a pretty short one, so I'm just going to give you guys like 2 seconds to think this one over. Okay, air rights. Air rights are the rights to use the space above the earth. Come on, yeah. So of course, when we talk about property rights, we talk about different forms of rights within the property. And air rights are obviously you want to make sure that you retain the right um, of things that are above the space of the earth. Now, obviously, like planes, things like that, you can't control whether or not someone flies a plane over your property. Sometimes that is, unless you're private property. But my point is air rights are super important to know because there's some legal ramifications. If, for example, like in New York, if you built, some sort of skyscraper and you're blocking maybe the sun from certain property and uh, you'd be surprised, if they had like solar panels, stuff like that. It's a lot more complex than you might think, but for our purpose here, just remember that air rights are the rights to use the space above the earth. So pretty self-explanatory there. All right, next one is alienation. Okay, here we go. All right, so think that one over. Okay, did you guys get it? Hopefully. So, alienation is the act of transferring title, ownership, an estate, or an interest in real estate from one party to another. So, that is the basic definition for alienation. It just basically means like transferring ownership. So, yes. All right. Next one, I believe, is the alienation clause. Yes. So, alienation clause. So, this is different than just regular alienation. So, keep that in mind and think this one over. Okay. Do you guys remember what the alienation clause is? Okay, the alienation clause is the provision in a mortgage or deed of trust signed with the lender that states that the borrower must pay the mortgage in full before the borrower can transfer the property. So it kind of connects. Well, yeah, it does connect to the alienation term that we talked about previously because it's transferring property, but this is more specific to a contract, more specifically a mortgage or deed of trust. And it basically states that, once somebody pays off their mortgage in full, they will then earn the right to the property and then it'll be transferred. So simple, but kind of complex at the same time, but important to know. So, all right. So, amendments. Okay, here we go. This one's a fun one. Let's see if you guys can get like Auntie exactly word for word for what the textbook definition is for this one. So think that one over. All right. What are amendments? All right. So, what we have is they are add ons or fixes to contracts. So, obviously, there's amendments. If you guys are familiar with the US amendments that the government uses to adjust laws, well, it's pretty much the same concept. An amendment is an add on or fix to a contract. So, for example, if you are in the process of buying a house and something shows up where maybe the inspection happens and it finds out that there's some termite damage, well, you would ask for your agent, or if you are the agent, either or, you'd ask for an amendment on the contract so that the seller uh, would either treat it for termite damage or whatever the case might be, or you know that that is referenced on there so that it can be handled. So yeah, a little bit of a tangent there. Sorry about that, but the point is yeah, when you think of an amendment, think of an add-on or a fix to a contract, uh, at least in the real estate perspective. All right, amenities, amenities. Okay, think that one over. Okay, did you guys figure it out? Hopefully. All right, amenities. So amenities are just useful features or an add-on to a house that typically adds value to a property. So pretty self-explanatory there. When you guys are showing houses, you're probably going to use this term 100 times. a week. These are the amenities. These are the amenities. That's things like that. But it's just basically a fancy term to explain a feature or an add-on to a house that, again, typically adds value to a property. All right. Next one. Ooh, amortization. I know this is a tongue twister. I've messed this term up hundreds of times on videos. Amortization. Say it with me, guys. Amortization. All right. Think that one over. Okay. Do you guys know what amortization is? Hopefully. Amortization is when payments divide into equal amounts for the duration of a loan. And that is like the most simple definition, but I think it's the best definition because it it actually explains what it does. When you hear things like, oh, an amortization schedule, oh, when does that loan amortize, things like that, like basically all they're saying is, well, when are the payments divided and are they equal slash what are the equal amounts and for what the duration. So again, it's complex. It's like a complex theory. Uh, but really, if you just know that amortization is when the payments are divided, and again into equal amounts for duration of time, then you're going to be way better off than most people that don't even know what the term means. So simple, but again complex at the same time, like a lot of these terms. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that one. Okay. Oh, antitrust laws. This is a fun one. All right. So think that one over for a moment. Okay. Antitrust laws. Do you guys remember what these things are? Hopefully. They're super important. So, antitrust laws are a collection of federal and state government laws that regulate the conduct and organization of business corporations, normally to promote fair competition for the benefit of the consumers. So, this is a pretty straightforward definition. But I mean, for the general term antitrust laws, this is pretty much all you need to know. Antitrust laws come up all the time in real estate, and they're super important to understand. That way, you're not breaking any rules because you could get sued, you could lose your license, things like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the basic term antitrust laws. All right, appraisal. Awesome. Okay, think that one over. Okay, you guys should know what an appraisal is, right? So an appraisal, all an appraisal is an estimate of an approximate worth of something. So in our terms, when somebody appraises property, they find out the approximate worth of the property. So they look at things like how new, maybe like the roof is, how old the property is, the kitchen amenities, what we were talking about earlier, things like that. They use all these things as well as they look at the cost that it would be to rebuild the building, as well as they look at other houses in the neighborhood and how much those are worth. There's tons of forms or tons of methods of appraisal, but for the basic term, you just need to know that it is an estimate of the approximate worth of something. Alrighty, so I think we're going to stick with the appraisal term here. Yep. Okay, appraisal contingency. Okay, so think that one over. Um, use your brain on this one and kind of really get into it. Okay, figure it out. So I'm going to go this one kind of fast since the last one we kind of already explained what an appraisal is. But with an appraisal contingency, the way these works are actually most lenders or banks require the buyer to have an appraisal done to the property before the loan is granted. Now, this is to ensure that the house is worth somewhat close to the price of the accepted offer. So basically, the remember these banks and lenders and loan people, like that's their business. That's how they make their money. And they want to make sure that they're investing in a property that is going to be worth it. If the appraisal happens and it comes up super, super low, and they're paying way too high, sometimes banks or lenders they'll back out. They'll say no, like unless you get the property at a lower price or you find something else, we are not going to grant you a loan. I've heard it happen hundreds of times. But the appraisal contingency is the specific part in a contract that states, hey, you need to have an appraisal done, and if something comes up and it might affect the transaction, then the buyer is able to potentially back out of the deal if there is some sort of an issue. Obviously, there's more to that, but that's pretty much the basics of that. And again, contingency, which we'll cover a little bit later, but when you're talking about appraisal contingency, that's just the specific part of the contract that states, hey, you need to get an appraisal done, and oftentimes, if it doesn't work out the way you want, you potentially could back out of the offer. So, all right, next one. Appraiser. Okay, so we did we did appraisal, we did appraisal contingency, and now appraiser. So, think that one over. Okay, who's an appraiser? Ah, so, although brokers and agents usually have some understanding of valuation process, usually they bring an appraiser to do the job. So I would say, instead of usually, I'd say like 99% of the time. Um, However, there are some exceptions. But anyway, appraisers have to have a detailed knowledge of methods of valuation, and in many states, they require specific license or certification to perform those duties. And of course, you guys already know what appraisal means, so I don't need to explain that. But yeah, an appraiser is just someone who appraisals. So simple as that. Oh, here we go. Appreciation. Okay. Appreciation. So let's see. Think that one over. Okay, did you guys get it? Figure it out? So, appreciation, when you hear appreciation, just think of appreciate and how happy that makes you feel. Because guess what? Appreciation is any gain in value of a property over time from any cause. So, you guess what? You appreciate that. If you buy property and it gains value, you bet your butt that you're going to be happy about that. You're going to appreciate that a lot. So that's all appreciation is. And of course, it's the opposite of depreciation, which we'll cover a little bit later. But appreciation is just any gain in value of a property over time from any cause. All right. Next one. Appurtenance. Okay, we actually do cover this in a video. Think that one over, guys. Go ahead and think it over. Okay. Do you guys remember what appurtenance means? Okay, so appurtenance is a noun. Yes. And what does it do? It describes an item that is attached to something. So in real estate, after something is installed into a property, it can be called an appurtenance, meaning it is passed on to a new owner if the property is sold. So, for example, uh, if maybe you installed a garage, I don't know if this is a good example or not, but maybe you have like one of those mobile garages that you can move back and forth, but maybe you installed it into the property so it can't move anywhere else now. It's like it's in the property, and it's part of the real property, which we'll cover the difference of that later, but you guys should be familiar with that. Then it would be an appurtenance. It comes with the property. It is installed onto the property. It's passed on to the new owner if the property is sold. All right. So, appurtenant. Okay. Here's the tricky thing. So, you're not going crazy. We did just see appurtenance. Now look, we're seeing appurtenant. Now, appurtenant is, oh, you know what? I'll give you guys a second to think that one over. Sorry, I jumped the gun on that one. Okay. Did you guys get it? Hopefully. All right. Appurtenant. Appurtenant is the adjective. It's an adjective, meaning is attached to something. So if something is appurtenant, it belongs to something else, either attached to or by law. So let's break this down very briefly because we've got tons of terms to go through. But appurtenant would be, okay, let's say you and I are showing property together. You and I, we're like the dream team. We're showing these houses to this new couple, and the couple's like, "Hey, um, is that pool? You know, maybe it's like one of those pools that like it's like outside above ground. So maybe they're like, hey, does that pool come with property?" And I would respond, "Yes, it's appurtenant." it meaning that it comes with the property or it's attached to it. So that's the difference. This is an adjective, while appurtenance is the noun describing an item. So I know that this is a little bit complicated and it's hard to squeeze in such this long video, but if you guys are struggling with this, I do encourage you guys to watch the appurtenance video that we have on our channel. Uh, if you want the link, leave a comment down below. I'll link it as soon as I can. And then there's one more term that has to deal with appurtenant, and that's appurtenant easement. So think that one over, and hopefully you guys can use your context clues to figure this one out. Okay, appurtenant easement. Do you guys know what this one is? Okay, so an appurtenant easement is an easement that runs with the land. So we're going to get into easements a little bit later, but just so you guys know, this is a type of easement that runs with the land, because some easements don't. Some easements are just until the property owner sells the property or transfers the property. So keep that in mind. This one specifically runs with land or the real property. All right. Oh, okay. Arbitration. So arbitration, for you guys with a business background, you should know this one. All right, think it over. Give you guys a couple seconds. Okay, do you guys remember what arbitration is? Or maybe this is a new term for you guys. If not, it's no big deal. It's kind of it's used a lot for some people, and for others, they probably rarely hear it. So arbitration is a way to resolve disputes. Typically, real estate arbitration happens when two homeowners want to resolve an issue and do not want to directly involve the courts. So the cool thing about arbitration is if you don't want to hire lawyers, you can hire a third party arbitration, and basically they'll sit you down. So we use this example that they gave. Let's say that there's two homeowners. Let's say I'm a homeowner and you're a homeowner, and we're having an issue. Maybe like a tree fell down, and we don't know who is going to pay for it, things like that. And maybe we just cannot agree, but we don't want to hire lawyers because we know that's going to cost a lot, and we don't want to involve the courts. So we'd go to an arbitrator, and we'd get arbitration, and basically they'd sit us down and be like, okay, here's what we can do. You guys can do A, B, or C, and they'll work with you to kind of figure out the problem. Why does this come up on the real estate exam and real estate? Well, because again, believe it or not, I mean, maybe you guys didn't know this, but disputes happen all the time with homeowners, and it's important to be informed on kind of how these things work, because if you're not only could you be in legal trouble if you give the wrong advice, but uh, it's just something that you need to know. It's as simple as that. It comes up way more often than you may think, but that's it on that one. So, attorney in fact. Okay. So think that one over. Give you guys a couple seconds. Okay. Do you guys know who an attorney in fact is? All right. So an attorney in fact is someone authorized to act on behalf of another person. Now, this is typically in business or for some sort of business transaction. So the way this works is, let's say you and I are brothers and sisters, or let's just say I'm brother, your sister or whatever, or brother. I don't know where I'm going with this, but the point is, let's just say we're related, okay? And let's say I lived in North Dakota and you lived in California, but I had property in California. Well, if I wanted you to handle the selling of the property, I can authorize you as an attorney in fact, so you can take care of it for me. And basically, you would become my attorney in fact. You would handle the transaction. That way, I wouldn't have to fly all the way down to California to handle it. So that's what that is. All right. Next one, avulsion. Okay. So I'll give you guys an opportunity to think that one over. Okay, now if you guys remember earlier, we were talking about accretion, which is the growth or acquisition of land. Well, now we're talking about avulsion, which is Different, because guess what? That is the immediate action of adding or tearing away by violent acts from natural causes. So, an example would be a dam breaking or a hurricane. So, again, remember earlier we were talking about accretion. Well, that's the slow process. That is a slow process. While avulsion is the instant, near instant, the immediate action. So some big things like hurricane, tornado, something where there's land added or took away, things like that. So keep that in mind. All right. Next one. Okay, we're in terms with B now. Balloon loan. Okay, so think that one over. Alrighty. Balloon loan. You guys familiar with this? Balloon loan is just a mortgage which does not fully amortize over the term. Guess what? You guys already know what amortize means because we went over it earlier. So, the way the balloon loan works is typically that is there's different types of balloon loans, but there's like a 7-year, 15-year, but I'll just explain basic. So basically you have these regular payments which aren't that bad. So let's just say you have a loan for $100,000 and or a house for $100,000. You get a loan, you get a mortgage for it, and your payments aren't that bad. They're really not that bad at all. But guess what? At the very end of a balloon loan, you owe whatever is left over. So since those payments are super low with the balloon loan, you basically have to either refinance at the end of the loan or pay it all out outright. There are some benefits of doing a balloon loan as well as some, not benefits, whatever that word is, I can't think of. But basically, yeah, that's a balloon loan. It just, the key takeaway, the key thing you need to know is it does not fully amortize over the term. It's different, it's spread out. So simple as that. All right, beneficiary. All right, think that one over. Gonna give you guys a couple seconds for that. Okay, did you guys figure it out? Hopefully. Beneficiary. Okay, so that is an individual for whom a trust works for. They benefit from the trust. That's the key. That's the secret. That is the secret of how to remember it, is that they benefit from the trust. So we'll go into the different people in the trust later, because again, we've got so many more terms to cover, but it's as simple as that. They benefit from the trust. That's the individual whom a trust works for. Okay. Ooh, a bilateral contract. Okay, awesome. All right, think that one over. Okay, did you guys figure it out? Hopefully. So, a bilateral contract is an agreement between at least two groups of people. That's right, two groups of people. Most business and personal contracts fall into this category, and you'll see the difference between a bilateral and a unilateral a little bit later. So I won't go into that, but a bilateral, that's the most business one, or I'm sorry, the most basic one. When you think of a contract, like 95% of the time, it's going to be bilateral. So, all right, bill of sale. So think that one over. Going to give you guys an opportunity to think about it. Do you guys remember what a bill of sale is? So, this term isn't used all over the place, but it's still important to know. Basically, it's the paperwork given to pass title to an individual property. Simple as that. All right, next one, blockbusting. All right, so not to be confused with blockbuster, blockbusting. All right, gonna give you guys a second to think that one over. All right, do you guys know what blockbusting is? Okay, it is an illegal practice where real estate agents sell houses at a low price to one race, then sell those same prices at a much higher price to a minority. Guess what? We were just talking about antitrust laws earlier. That is covered in this. Blockbusting is defined in the antitrust laws, They explained, hey, this is an illegal practice. You guys can't do this. This is super wrong, and that's what it is. So when you think of block busting, just remember it's an illegal practice where agents sell houses um, for one price to one race and then one price to another. And it's not just race either. It could be any minority or any type of preference. It's not just race, but it could be any of those types of things. So okay. Breach of contract. Alrighty. Think that one over for a little bit. Okay. Did you guys figure it out? Breach of contract is a contract. Breach of contract is the failure to complete an agreement per agreed terms. So this one's pretty self-explanatory, but if you hear somebody's not following a contract, they are in breach of contract. That means they are not completing the agreement per the contract or per the agreed terms. Pretty self-explanatory there. Buffer zone. Okay. Think that one over. Okay. Do you guys remember what a buffer zone is? Hopefully. So a buffer zone is just the space between two districts. And this is, again, when we're talking about zoning. But basically, two districts such as like a park, playground, or highway. But the point of a buffer zone is to ease the transition from zone to zone. So this is an amazing concept. I don't know who invented the idea of buffer zones, but zoning boards use this to ease the transition from a zone to another. So let me give you an example. Let's say there's a big residential area, um, and there's like tons of houses, but there's this big open area in between it. And then on the other side, there's tons of commercial properties. So maybe, like a Walmart, Lowe's, things like that. Well, in between, that would be the buffer zone. And they could put things like a playground or a park. And that would ease the transition because, again, when these zoning is pretty strict, residential, commercial, things like that, like they're pretty strict. But the city planner wants to make things as natural looking as possible because it kind of does look weird if there's just like 10 houses that are residential and then 10 commercial properties right next to each other. So they come up with these things called buffer zones, like playgrounds, parks, and it could be as simple as thing as a highway too. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, that's what a buffer zone is. There's your little deep dive on that. All right, next one, building code. So it looks like we're sticking with the zoning related things. So think that one over. Okay, did you guys figure it out? Building code. Building codes are the rules and standards of properties for the protection of public safety and welfare. Okay, so another one, it's important to know. I'm not going to go a deep dive on this one. You guys should be familiar with building codes by now. But basically, they're just rules. They're just rules and standards that the local government kind of establishes for safety. So, all right, next one. Oh, the bundle of rights. Okay, this is a fun one. Think that one over. Give you guys some time to think that one through. Okay, do you guys remember what the bundle of rights is? Okay, so the bundle of rights is when a person purchases property. He or she is given the rights to the property. These rights can be split up and given to the different parties. Thus, why they're called the bundle of rights. So, eh, you guys have probably heard me say this before if you're not new to this channel, but you got to think of the bundle of rights like a bundle of sticks. You can give one stick to one person, you could keep the other sticks. That's why they're called a bundle of rights because oftentimes you give some of your rights to the property. You don't even realize it, but let's just say maybe, you know, you give some of the rights to a fracking company to come frack and get oil or something on this big property that you have. You're technically giving part of your bundle away to them to use those rights. But pretty much it on that one. But of course, super important to know. Ooh, buyer's home sale contingency. Okay. Think that one over. Gonna give you guys a couple seconds. Okay, so do you guys remember when I was talking about contingencies earlier? I know that we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but so this contingency just allows the buyer to cancel the contract if they are unable to sell their current home in a specified amount of time. So, give you guys a quick example. Let's say you are looking for a house, but you already own a house. You want a new house. Maybe you just had some kids and you want a bigger house. Well, obviously, you can't own two houses. So, I mean, you could, but maybe in this perspective, you don't want to. Uh, so you'd write into your contract, and you'd work with your agent, or if you're the agent, you do it yourself. That there's a contingency that if they are unable to sell their current home in a specified amount of time, then the contract won't go through. So this is used for people that again are selling a house as well as looking for a new house. But simple as that. And again, the contingency that just means it's in the contract. So all right, next one, buyer's agent. Okay, so think that one over. Gonna give you guys an opportunity to think about that. Okay, so for this one, I always say, if someone is in the market for a new home, they enlist what? What do they enlist? They enlist a buyer's agent. Yes, a buyer's agent. So a buyer's agent just represents the buyer in a transaction. In return for their services, they receive a fee. So when you guys get your license and pass that exam, that's what you guys are going to be doing probably. You're going to be buyers, sellers, agents, same thing. Um, well, they're not the same thing, but you know what I mean. You know, they're interchangeably. You could do both. But my point is yeah, that's potentially going to be you guys someday. So keep that in mind. But that's all you need to know for buyer's agent. Okay. Oh, looks like we're into the C terms now. Okay, capital gain. All right, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to think this one over. Okay, did you guys figure this one out? If you guys have an investing background, you should be familiar with this term. So this is the profit from the sale or auction of property or investment. So let's say you bought a house for $100,000, and 5 years later you sold it for 150,000. Your capital gain would be 50,000. That's the profit you guys made. Now, obviously, the those are cash buys. What I was talking about earlier, it'd be much different if you had a mortgage, but for this example, simple as that. It's the profit from the sale or auction of property or investment. Okay, capitalization. Awesome. Okay, so think that one over. Okay, this is another investing term. So capitalization is the conversion of assets or income into capital. So um, when we're talking about capital here, um, we're basically talking about money. So let's say you had your house from earlier. We were talking about capital gains. Uh, Once you sell that house and you made that $50,000, that would be the conversion. So you converted your assets into capital. So, oops, simple as that. Capitalization rate. Okay, this is a good one. Another investing one. Think that one over. Okay, do you guys know what this one is? So, cap rate, for short, is used to indicate the rate of return that is expected to be generated on a property. So, um, this comes up all the time in real estate investing. And if you guys do want to become real estate investors, if that's something that you plan on doing while you get your license, things like that, super important to be familiar with this term. But yeah, it's as simple as that. It's just used to generate the return, the rate of return that is expected to be generated on a property. So, all right. Caveat emptor. So think that one over. Okay, so I might have butchered it, and excuse me, I didn't take Latin. So I'm not really good with these foreign terms, pronouncing them, that is. But this is another Latin term. And what does it mean? Well, it means let the buyer or buyers beware. So that concept, or this concept, is that the buyer is responsible for checking the quality of a product before a purchase is made. So it's another one of those phrases that comes up during the sale of a property, and it's just basically uh, stating that buyers are responsible for doing their own due diligence. So it kind of goes the same with the term due diligence, which we'll probably see later, but that's pretty much it for that one. So, okay, here we go. More Latin terms. Okay, so think that one over. Sorry, let me butcher it and pronounce it for you. Ceteris paribus. Um, so think that one over. Okay, ceteris paribus. That's my bad pronunciation for this one. This just means, and it's another Latin phrase, all other things equal, or in plain terms, all things remaining constant. If you ever took an economics class, maybe in high school or in college or uni, like you will know this term. This is like ingrained in your head when you take economics. But for our instance, it is super important because not only do agents have to be familiar with economics and how things are working with the economy and the real estate market, but if you want to be a real estate investor, it's something that, it does come up. So basically, it just means all things remaining constant. So it comes more up in like math formulas. Like if you say, like, I don't even want to get into the math here because I don't want to confuse you guys. But for just this, just remember that ceteris paribus means all things remaining constant or other things equal. So remember that. All right, chatels. All right. So this is a short one, but an important one. So I'm gonna give you guys a couple seconds to think that one over. Okay, chatels. So that is just another word for personal property. Simple as that. And we'll get into personal property a little bit later. So if you're wondering, well, what does that mean? Well, don't worry, we'll get into that later. So, all right, closing. Closing. One of our favorite terms here. So think that one over. Okay, are you guys familiar with closing? I hope so. Closing is the final step in executing a real estate transaction. It's when official ownership and payment is transferred to the rightful parties. Closing usually takes place after a purchase agreement is made and the title is now ready to be transferred. So, closing, just remember it's the final step in executing a real estate property. Co op. Okay, think that one over. All right, do you guys know what a co op is? So, when you hear co op, think nonprofit. Co op is a nonprofit corporation and it even comes with a board of directors, and each resident is a shareholder. Perhaps the largest distinction between a condominium and a co-op, which we'll go over condominiums later, is that most of the co-op associations require that a prospective purchaser be approved by a committee composed of current co-op owners. So basically, we got a lot of mumbo jumbo there, but it's important. Basically, a co-op, um, co-op is like, how should I explain this for you guys? Let's say you have like tons of um, apartment like buildings, but they're not apartments. And maybe you're like a real estate investor and you bought this big apartment complex, but you're like, well, I don't really want to be a landlord. I'd rather sell these individual spots and create a nonprofit corporation to kind of handle this. And that's what it would. So they would sell. Um, Actually, I'm sorry. They wouldn't sell the individual plots, but they would sell ownership into the nonprofit through shares, and then the shareholder would be able to lease property within that. So I know it's kind of a complicated concept because I know people get co-op and condominiums all the time. So I'm sorry if I didn't explain the best, but pretty much it's just like eh, a condominium is where they own it outright, whereas a co-op Again, it's via shareholders. So remember that. The big distinction is when you hear co-op, think of board of directors, shareholders. When you hear condominium, think of individual owns, like individual part of the property. So hopefully that made sense. If you guys do have any questions on that one, please leave them down below. I'll be happy to explain that a little bit better. So co-ownership, okay. So co-ownership, oh, let me give you guys 2 seconds to think that one over. Okay, figure it out. So co-ownership is when a title of one parcel of real estate is held by 2 or more individuals. Those parties are called co-owners or concurrent owners. Individuals may co-own property as tenants in common, joint tenants, or tenants by the entirety, or, of course, community property. So, okay, color of title. So, I'm going to give you guys a couple moments to think that one over. Okay, what is color of title? Well, it's a legal concept, and it's a concept of a claim to title appearing to be legally valid, but in actuality, the claim is defective. So, um, a quick example for this one would be if you established uh, let's say you're selling your house and you had like 100 acres of a huge property, and you wanted to sell all 100 acres. Well, let's say you put together this contract and you put on here like all this oh yeah, I want to sell all 100 acres, and somebody you find a ready willing buyer, and they're like, okay, and you guys establish this contract, it's all good to go. But during the process of the buyer doing diligence, they figure out that you only actually own 95 of those acres, not 100. So you can't legally sell that extra 5 acres. So again, it's a claim to title appearing to be valid. So you legally think that because maybe like prior when you bought the house, they were like, oh yeah, it's 100 acres or something like that. But in actuality, the claim is defective. So I know that's a little bit of a confusing one, but actually we do have a video on that topic where I have a better explanation on that. But that's color of title. Okay, collateral. All right, think that one over. Going to give you guys an opportunity to think it. Okay, you guys familiar with collateral? Hopefully. Super important. So, collateral is something of worth promised to a lender as security or a mortgage for an obligation. So, simple as that. You know, if you're going to buy a house, the collateral would then be the house. If you can't pay that mortgage, then they could take the house because that's that collateral. Simple as that. It's promised to the lender as security. So, yeah. All right, commercial property. Okay, we're gonna end with an easy one. So, commercial property. What is commercial property? We talked a little bit about this earlier. Give you guys a couple seconds to think that one over. Okay, commercial property. Commercial property is the property that generates an income or a salary. So, simple as this: there's residential property, and then there's commercial property. Commercial property is where businesses are or run out of. It could be anything from a warehouse to something like Walmart or to something like a restaurant. That would be commercial property. Residential obviously would be the opposite. That's where people live. That's where people sleep and things like that. So, but that's going to be it for this portion of the video. I encourage you guys to watch the next part. We're 50 definitions down. We've got another 205 definitions left. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And of course, watch the next video, which will be out probably very soon after this one. So thank you guys so much for watching. As always, this is Zach from realestatelicensewizard.com. Thanks so much for listening to my voice today. I really appreciate it. All right, guys. As always, make the day magical.